Thank you. Hi, my name is Ann Miller. I'm the director of the Colorado Resiliency Office in the Department of Local Affairs, and we welcome you for the second virtual Colorado Resiliency Summit as part of our 2025 Colorado Resiliency Framework Update. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are so excited to have you. And for those who are joining us again, following our first summit in July, welcome back. Before we begin, the Colorado Resiliency Office respectfully acknowledges that the land we occupy in Colorado today is the true ancestral homeland of the Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne nations and peoples, and the original stewards who lived in reciprocal relationship with the land. Further, we acknowledge that there are many tribes that are historically tied to Colorado and its lands. As we continue to cultivate conversations about resilience, it is imperative to recognize the resilience of Indigenous peoples who continue to face the ramifications of colonization and forced displacement from their ancestral homelands. And acknowledgement of this truth is critical to building mutual respect and connection across all foundations of heritage and cultural knowledge. As part of this framework update and ongoing, the Colorado Resiliency Office is committed to strengthening our partnership with tribal nations, continuing to research and understand the unique impacts to Indigenous communities and integrate Indigenous knowledge in a manner that is inclusive and respectful. We are excited to build upon the momentum of the first summit in July and dive more deeply into the pressing challenges and opportunities impacting the future of our state and work with you on crafting strategic action. We've got a full agenda today, and we're starting with a little bit a primer on our resilience superpowers we're going to tap into. We'll hear from youth voices, and we'll roll up our sleeves and talk about strategic actions by topic, and then report back on our next step. So we'll jump right in and look forward to the engagement today. The state's definition of resilience helps to ground us in our conversations and to assist us as we collaborate to craft these strong strategies for the framework update as part of our planning process. As you can see, it is a broad definition, but that is intentional in order to achieve the future that is adaptive and responsive to disruptions, including those we have yet to face. It requires us to identify solutions that provide co-benefits across sectors and to come together from all levels of government and communities, as well as partners from business to community organizations, on and on. To help mobilize us today and navigate current and future shocks and stressors, we need to tap into our resilience superpowers. We're going to start with curiosity and imagination. Because the world is changing fast, it's imperative that we ask a lot of questions about the frames we work in. Lots of processes and regulations, et cetera, were built on historic contexts that no longer serve us. We have the ability to create new ways of operating that still align with our values. Being curious enhances our ability to imagine the world we want. Long-term thinking gets us out of the reactive space and enables us to make lasting investments in our community's future. We cannot continue to advance in the future by getting stuck in the same thinking of the past. In the context of uncertainty, we have to be willing to let go of processes and tools that don't work anymore in order to craft those creative solutions we talked about. It pays to invest in work that will endure for many generations. And in order to do that, we have to think about what future generations might face and need and create solutions that can adapt and serve over time. I'm really interested in hearing from youth voices about what that looks like to them. Social capital is a lead indicator of a resilient community. So many members of our community exhibit inherent resilience on a day-to-day basis. How are we taking measures to build on intergenerational knowledge and mutual aid and create intentional and meaningful relationships to do the hard work ahead? Resilience is a proactive space. It's a space to get ahead of anything that might disrupt our communities without losing sight of our goals and values. Applying resilience principles can make for effective prioritization and decision making that we're going to start applying today that are in line with our values and goals, build on our strengths, and lessen the impact of our vulnerabilities. Sometimes our communities may be fairly locked into a path, especially those ones that require a lot of investments in infrastructure. But if we have already planned for disruptions, we're better able to adapt. We can make course corrections and pivot when thrown a curveball. I will now turn it over to Shale Sabo, the CRO's Resiliency Program Manager, who will ground us with information to prepare us for this afternoon's conversation. As I hand off the mic, I invite you to put into the chat other superpowers that you can think of that are characteristic of Colorado communities and how we have the ability to take action to strengthen our resilience. So put on your capes and tap into your resiliency powers. Shale.
Great. Thank you so much, Anne. So yes, we have many faces that are returning back from our first summit, as well as new faces. So for those of you who are newer, you might be wondering, what is the Colorado Resiliency Framework? So the framework is updated via a collaborative process across state agencies, as well as engaging you all as champions of resilience from across the state. So for those who may be joining us for the first time, and as a quick refresher, we just wanted to do a quick grounding of what this framework is and the intention of the plan. So this is a plan that helps the state respond to future changes, coordinate actions across agencies, and advance resiliency statewide. And this is done, as Anne mentioned earlier, by taking a holistic cross-sector approach to developing solutions and also identifying actions across four key theme areas of social equity and unique community needs, economic vibrancy and diversity, and risks from natural and other hazards, with impacts of climate change being that broader overall overarching theme of all of these, due to the ability it has to be a force multiplier to existing shocks and stressors. And this plan is updated on a 5-year basis to ensure that it maintains relevancy and keeps up with changing conditions. But actions, of course, as Anne mentioned, with one of our superpowers, that are identified do extend far beyond the 5 years and should have generational impact beyond today. So how is the CRF implemented, or the Colorado Resiliency Framework? This is not solely a Colorado Resiliency Office plan, nor is it a Department of Local Affairs plan, but a statewide plan. So that means that in order to truly be effective, we must work across all state agencies. And it requires that all agencies take initiative and responsibility to integrate resiliency principles into their work and to implement the plan. So while the CRO is charged with being the leader and convener of the players in this work and in the development and stewardship and eventual implementation of the plan, we also are going to be working with our Colorado Resiliency Working Group, which includes representatives from agencies across the state who come together to keep this work moving forward. All right, next slide, please. And then just as a quick overview of our North Stars. So again, this is more so for the planning process and the outcomes that we hope to achieve as a result of this entire process. So again, we want to make sure that we're looking at actions that drive systems level change. So going beyond kind of our individual silos and looking again at how everything interacts with one another and making sure that we are addressing the gaps and opportunities from a systems perspective. There must be a good balance of local and state priorities. We understand that the needs are different across the state, and just keeping that in consideration as we develop our actions and priorities. Prioritizing equitable pathways and outcomes. To be resilient requires that we are addressing gaps in access to barriers, or addressing barriers that create access issues for resources for all Coloradoans. And then we have 9 state identified resiliency criteria that help us to ensure that we're looking at long-term, that we're looking at co-benefits, that we are utilizing innovation and best practices to make sure that anything we develop is inherently resiliency building, and then must be future oriented, as we've mentioned a couple of times, including the impacts of climate into the future. All right. And then lastly, I just kind of wanted to go over what we heard from the first summit to help kind of guide us into our discussion this afternoon. So first and foremost, to identify solutions, we really need to approach each of these areas as forming an ecosystem. For example, we cannot discuss affordable housing without also centering hazard risk, social systems, and building economic opportunity, as each of these aspects interact and we consider all of these elements, we are more successful in achieving resilient outcomes. Um, in the first summit, you might have seen from the first primer document, we had human capacity and adaptive funding as kind of their own areas of focus, but what we have kind of come to an understanding of is that these should be woven throughout all of the areas of focus. So elevating these to be within and centered in each of these areas. We also need to facilitate spaces where the right people are talking, such as ensuring that emergency management and planners are brought together around reducing risk to hazards through land use planning, for example. This also includes ensuring that we're listening to community members who are disproportionately impacted by shocks and stresses and integrating their unique needs into actions that are collectively developed to strengthen resiliency. Maintaining a data-informed approach is imperative, and while we should be aware of the potential negative impacts of emerging technology, we must be also willing to embrace it, where it helps to ensure that we have a competitive advantage, makes us safer, or allows us to innovate. And then lastly, many systems were built in such a way that they have created inherent competition versus encouraging collaboration. So how we want to address the impacts of the future by really diving into that coordination across sectors, embracing diverse perspectives, and breaking down barriers and silos. And we should continue to strive for solutions that not only have co-benefits to the most feasible degree, but also develop our systems to foster more of that collaboration and create more creative partnership. We have spoken a few times already this morning about the fact that strengthening resiliency really does require taking that long-term view and thinking about the impacts of shocks and stresses into future generations. So we are so excited today to have the opportunity to hear from youth from across the state who can share with us from their perspective what they dream of for the future of Colorado and what resiliency is going to look like for them. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Trace to lead a fireside chat.
Thanks, Joe. Really appreciate that. And thanks again for everyone being here. I'm excited to kind of facilitate this next conversation, but really as a facilitator on a panel with young folks, youth and young adults, you learn quickly that you do little facilitation and you do a lot of listening. So I want to encourage you all right now to put down whatever you're looking at, whatever you're thinking about. And let's practice some deep listening because we've got five brilliant young folks, again, youth and young adults, a variety of ages, a variety of life experiences, a variety of locations, identities, all the things, and just really excited to dive into a conversation. So, Kirsten, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and take the slide off. And here we go. There's you five and me, and excited to do some of that deep listening. Got about 15, 20 minutes. We're going to borrow the time that we need to make sure that we spend some real time with you all. So, real quick, if you could give me a quick introduction, who you are, where you live in Colorado, what you're doing right now in life. Are you in school? I know some of y'all are in high school, some of you are in college, some of you are young professionals. When we say youth and young adult, we're talking into our 20s as well. And we're talking, I think Pepper shared that you're a sophomore. So we've got a big age range, which I'm excited about. So just a quick intro, and then we're going to start with our North Star question that we talked about, and we'll just kind of go from there. So Pepper, you want to kick us off, and then I'll just go around my screen.
Hi, I'm Pepper Tyson. I'm from San Miguel County and I'm a sophomore.
Cool, Pepper, great. And I think when I Googled you, are you on the soccer team out there?
I am.
Okay, your name's on the soccer roster. Love it. Okay, cool. Chanel, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Chanel. I live in Aurora. I'm currently a student at CU Denver, majoring in marketing and graphic design. I'm also a community member, so I'm involved with NEM, the Alumni Collective, and then part of CYC, Colorado Youth Congress, and just some other community organizations.
Love it. Chanel, you're doing a lot. So that was a humble intro. I love that. Thank you. Ashton, go ahead.
My name is Ashton Defy. I live in Monte Vista and I'm a senior at Delmore High School.
Amazing. Ashton, why'd you come today? Just curious, real quick.
I was asked to. Honestly,
Why are
I
you
thought
why
it
are
was
you
fun.
curious to be here?
I want to see what's going on. I want to see what Colorado's going to look like for our future.
Love that. Thanks, Ashton. Mateo, go ahead.
So, hello, everybody. My name is Mateo, pronouns he, him. I'm here in my capacities as the program manager for Colorado Youth Congress. So, we're a statewide organization that does work with students around social change projects and civic engagement. So, yeah, really just here to share my perspective, both as someone who had a lot of access to programs like CYC as I was growing up, but also to represent some of those, projects that those youth have created as well. So, yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you, Mateo. I really appreciate it. And Ivan, go ahead.
My name is Ivan. I currently live in Longmont, but I was born and raised in Denver. I am a college student at the University of Denver studying public policy and political science. And I am here through Ethnium, the alumni collective. And
Can y'all real quick, Ednium, just can somebody give me a quick Chanel, can you tell me real quick what's the highlight of what Ednium does?
Yeah, so NEM is all about connecting like high school alum in the Denver metro area basically to create like mentorship opportunities for other high schoolers in Denver, but also connecting the alumni as well. And they also like to like spotlight homegrown talent in Aurora. Not sorry, not Aurora, but like overall Denver. And they create a lot of programs and opportunities for individuals to learn more about Denver, like through civic advocacy and things like that.
Love it. Great, thank you so much. We heard the name a couple times, so I just want to make sure folks are clear. So we've got some Front Range representation. We've got San Luis Valley, we've got San Mateo County, up to Longmont, so the I-25 corridor as well. So excited to just kind of get in. Want to ask the first kind of key question, and Ivan, I'm going to pick on you to start us off. The question kind of as we like officially wrote it out, it's like you're imagining a Colorado, you're looking at like your future. You are the future, right? Your friends are the future, your community, your family, the folks you care about and love. You're imagining a resilient state now and in the future from your perspective and those personal experiences. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What's the function? What's top of mind for you? Particularly as you look again to the positive side. What are you hopeful for?
um, I'd say top of mind is communities who have the opportunities and who have the resources to kind of um, uh, push each other forward, to help each other grow, whether it be, personally or economically, and um, to have a system have a system in place that works with communities, um, along with with different environmental issues, and have those systems work with those communities rather than against, or also having those communities within those systems to kind of also influence what it is that those systems produce. So in a very, yeah, in a way where community is, and the vibrancy of community isn't forgotten and go, but nourished. So yeah.
I love that. So communities celebrated for who they are, the vibrancy of that, and ensuring that that stills. And I'm hearing the kind of like the mutual aid, the connectedness of communities, and what does that actually look like, and how does that support the resilience piece? Chanel, why don't you jump in, and then we'll kind of bop around with this answer, and then I would love to kind of pick out some things I'm hearing to dive deep on.
Yeah, so for me, I was thinking about how we can use like community organizations that are already like basically kind of like investing in homegrown talent, kind of like Enneam says, but like using the community organizations that we do have to continue to build Colorado in a way, because we do have a lot of organizations doing similar work or the same work, and it could be really helpful if we combine them to all meet a vision and a mission. Because, for example, like we probably have multiple like community organizers working on like food justice or housing, and being able to actually just combine them. So then these missions or like statements or like certain things that we want to work on is basically has all of the, I guess the word is like multiple individuals that are, no, I don't really know the word for it, but it's kind of like when you have multiple people, they all know different things and being able to use them all to get where you want to be at. So I think that would definitely like build Colorado in a way because you want to make sure that you're using your resources like equitable in a way, but also not like not using them all when you have them. So just being like bringing community together and using them throughout everything in Colorado, but also like using the communities that have been formed too.
Yeah, Chanel, you're reminding me of something I hear often in this space, which is, and we've talked about this with the resiliency office, which is it's really easy to build new tables, right? And be like, we're building this table, we're gonna have this conversation, we're gonna do this thing, we're gonna start this organization. And kind of what I'm hearing from you is like, there are so many tables that already exist. How do we connect those tables? How do we like deepen those roots? And how do we actually use the folks, whether it's professionals, personal experience, et cetera, but draw some of those connecting factors. So you see a Colorado that's again kind of going back to Ivan's theme of like connectedness. Do we know one another? Do we know who's doing what? And are we actually like getting a seat at the tables that already exist versus building those new ones? Love that. Thanks, Chanel. Pepper, what about you? What's top of mind? What does a resilient Colorado look like to you?
Well, I hope that a resilient Colorado can like remember the definition of resilience, whether that is, the definition of resilience like being the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from challenges, or being the Colorado definition of resilience. And I think that's because challenges like they are going to affect us and there's no way to be invincible. So why not be resilient? And I think also that allowing young people to contribute to these conversations is very important because having a say is empowering not only for us now, but for us as leaders in the future, which is empowering for everyone. So I think that's important. And all sectors can benefit from remembering these things because, resilience is the bigger picture and youth are also part of the bigger picture. And I think we bring an important perspective and resiliency should look like continuing to widen this perspective and shorten the gap between youth and policy. Yeah, and that's me is making more space for youth advocacy and continuing to have us part of these conversations and decisions.
Thanks, Pepper. I'm like, if we were all thinking about this in 10th grade, we would be building a better world. So thank you for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
That I draw like I hear you say like we got to remember what the definition is and how what we're working from and almost use that as a North Star. So as we talk about resiliency, can we always point back to actually what how this is in service to that definition and how that's is in service to that the actual building out the resiliency piece. So I really appreciate you highlighting that. Ashton, and then we'll close it out with Mateo and then move on to another question.
I think for me, a resilient Colorado would definitely be involving the youth and the community a lot more in the decisions. Personally, I have no idea. I don't know who the mayor of Monte Vista is. I know who the mayor of Almosa is because I've spoken at events with him and he's been very involved with this youth. And I think that really is an important part of the community because the youth are the future.
So Ashton, we're gonna get to kind of strategies from y'all's perspective, but it sounds like you're already laying the groundwork of like there needs to be systems and structures in place for that actual partnership because some people do it well and a lot of people don't do it well, right? Your example of
Yeah.
the mayor versus mayor situation. So love that. Mateo, bring us home kind of on this. I'm curious, not a youth yourself, more on the young adult, mid adult section. I don't know, you'd have to tell us your age, but but working, in such a statewide
Mhm.
system as Colorado Youth Congress, what
Mhm.
here are you hearing that's kind of vibing with what you hear in the work you do every day, and also any other perspectives from your personal experiences you want to share?
Totally, yeah. Definitely just want to uplift a lot of what I've already heard. Like, for example, Chanel mentioning folks not working in silos. I think that a lot of folks in the nonprofit sector now are starting to really understand, hey, like we definitely are stronger when we're together. So I know at least as far as like Colorado Youth Congress and our work in the Denver Metro Aurora area, we're doing a lot of stuff around school board candidate forums, but we're trying to do that actually in collaboration with other organizations rather than each organization doing their own forum, for example. And also just want to uplift something that Ashton mentioned as well, just around, when we think about kind of a vision for resiliency, particularly as like Colorado Youth Congress, a lot of what we think about is wanting to have youth involved at every level of decision making. That's kind of like our, vision as an organization, is having youth involved in all decisions that are kind of made that really impact their lives. And I think a lot of that relates to the framework that you all created. I think for myself, from what I've seen, in our work as CYC, just when I reflect on a lot of the themes that I see students really wanting to act on, I see a lot of, energy around mental health, a lot of energy around gun violence, also thinking about the impact of technology and how that has sort of shaped our lives. We have students that create their own projects every year. So those are just some of the themes that I've picked out from that. But yeah, I would just say ultimately when I think about, my own vision and how that relates to that, I think resiliency is really about, especially, investing in the younger generation and actually, providing models and tools for young people to be able to both be civically engaged, but also to take care of themselves as they're being leaders. So that would be my humble sort of response to that.
Yeah, not no, don't make it humble. We love it. We want you to be not humble in this. This is your time to say that. I love that. I'm curious to hear from anyone. I want to kind of just open it up generally, and then I know Nicole, I see your hand raised. I'm guessing that you have a question, but if you don't mind if I ask one more question and then we'll kind of open it up a little bit with the time we have, and then to your point, how do we keep this conversation going? 20 minutes is not enough to be like, what do you think? Okay, we know now, never mind. And Mateo really would just highlight your point and Ashton's point around like what would it actually look like for youth to be at every level of decision making, and with the understanding of the challenges, right? Like even to have these conversations, it's challenging. People are busy, youth are busy, like professionals are busy. Getting people to like come to the table is a hard thing to do. So I kind of want to, on the strategy side, I want to dig in because we just have limited time today. Like, what is one idea you have? Like you just shared like what resiliency kind of, I'm hearing the different themes that you all shared. What's a strategy? Like we're talking strategies today. People are talking strategies in these different sectors, right? We're talking about housing, we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about all these things. So as it relates to whether it's youth involvement or or any of the different pieces you all talked about, what's something that kind of makes you say, well, if you would just do X, if we could just do Y, can you give us, and maybe it's something you're already doing. So Mateo, to your point, like y'all are doing some really good stuff. Like, do you want to highlight something that's already being done and how do we scale that? How does that come into like government decision making practices? How do we become better partners there? So I'll stop there. What's an idea you have? And then Shale, do you want to jump in right now with your
Yeah,
thought?
just to kind of piggyback onto that, resiliency is about taking action today for what's going to happen into the future. So maybe it's something that you're already doing, but also what should we be paying attention to that maybe we're not enough right now? So either way you kind of want to answer that question. We're hoping to hear from you. So yeah.
Thank you, Shale. Who wants to jump in, kick us off?
I can jump in with something that like has first come to mind. This kind of came to mind when Trace earlier you mentioned that if we were all thinking about this in the 10th grade with Pepper, we'd have a much completely different world. And I feel like it's not it's never too early to like start thinking about these issues, especially like, in high school or in middle school. And I feel like I feel like the reason why we kind of aren't at that level specifically is in part because of the way we have our education system structured. And I think a lot of that has to do with, standardized testing, for example, something that doesn't really cultivate critical thinking, that doesn't really cultivate like action-based learning, for example. And I feel like that kind of comes the system that we've kind of developed around schools and like how funding goes into schools as well because of like these standardized tests, for example, that kind of determine whether or not like a school has the opportunity to continue operating look, and we could go like I think about like the like even deeper than that, like how like communities don't really have the resources for those standardized tests specifically, but or like certain communities don't really have those resources. But like aside from that, like sideline, you also like when you have incentive structures that don't really allow for that thinking about these issues in 10th grade, thinking about making sure that teachers are more so focused on these test scores or like these grades or that doesn't really allow for the door to open. I think that's where I first see one of the biggest, I guess, ways that we could build um
Yeah,
a
well, I was gonna say,
more.
Ivan, if you know, I'm gonna jump in just because I want to make sure we've got enough time to keep sharing. What I'm hearing, I won't wade into the debate around testing. You can't trap me there. It's a good debate. I love the debate, but I won't reveal my thoughts right now. But what I'm hearing from you at the high level is we're creating these systems and structures, or we want to improve systems and structures at a critical thinking level. We want to involve youth in those sorts of things. Do our systems and structures of the way that we raise future generations actually lend themselves to that critical thinking, to that kind of like collaborative effort around how we actually shape our systems, our decision making structures, those sorts of things. So is that kind of accurate with like what you're saying around
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a deeper look because whether we're talking about education or whether we're talking about the different infrastructures here, I think I'm getting the connection there that you're making. I want to
yeah.
make sure I let a couple of other and drop into the chat, Ivan, if there's additional context that you would add into that. Let's utilize our tech as we're talking so that people can share. Who else wants to share ideas? We got a few more minutes. I'd love to hear like a concrete idea you have or something that you're excited to share out. Particularly as folks go into their breakout rooms and are talking about their strategies, like what do you want them to keep in mind, whether it's your idea or something that you want them to keep in mind as they think of their ideas?
I think something that we could really do is get kids more involved in what they want to do when they grow up. For me, that was I got a business internship with Michaela. That's kind of how I ended up here, and that really pushed me into figuring out, hey, this is what I want to do. And I know a lot of kids that graduated this year, last year, a couple years ago, they still don't know what to do because high school for them was just focused on getting those good grades and getting out of there. But there wasn't any of that hands-on real life experience that like I got and some of my other fellow students got when they were also doing this internship with me.
Love that, Ashton. I'm hearing a very clear ask of the CRO team in that one to think about how they partner with the workforce folks at the state to ensure that as we're talking about resiliency, what opportunities actually are there as it relates to the kind of like tools we're equipping youth with in those sorts of internship opportunities, et cetera. So Ashton, love that. Again, if you want to share any more other context, drop it in the chat. Chanel, Mateo, Pepper, anything to add with this kind of like what's an idea? What's the top of mind? What do you hope for? What do you want?
I can share. So I was thinking more so on the youth mental health side around the resources that there is because there are resources within like the schools and they're kind of limited though because you kind of just really have like the counselor and the counselors are strapped usually with like academics and like other like counseling concerns, but being able to create more options within the mental health resources in those high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools and being able to equip like teachers and counselors and even parents with mental health training because suicide prevention is something that is taught but it's not really spoken about and sometimes mental health is a taboo topic within families and schools but the education on that does need to be improved because you don't want individuals in schools feeling overwhelmed especially like younger kids and then not having the tools or resources to navigate themselves out of that because yes, like there is the resources to go like find a therapist, but starting that conversation and knowing how to bring it up to your parent or a parent like knowing how to bring it up to the child can be really tough. So being able to have like I guess organizations that work with like youth mental health training or like organizations to come into those schools and kind of like give that trainings to parents, counselors, teachers so then they are equipped to prevent things like suicide in the future, which I know is a tough topic. I should have like said like a disclosure, but yeah.
I appreciate that, Chanel. I mean, you're underscoring again. I was talking to the CRO office about like folks are talking about really specific things today, but you can't be prescriptive when you're talking to youth and young adults around like what's top of mind for them. And so what I'm hearing from you all is like, yeah, there's some overlap here around how we're talking about defining, thinking about resilience, but are those the things that are top of mind for you all? And I hear what you're saying, Chanel, is like mental health is a big one. And is that how are we weaving that into the supports and structures we're creating for Coloradans and for communities? So I'm pulling that theme out and ensuring, that as we think about that's something, is there a place for that in this framework? And to really push the office on that. Love that. Pepper and Mateo, bring us home on this kind of point of the conversation, and then I'll any closing thoughts from the CRO team, and then unfortunately we have to pivot to talking to all the other people, but it'll be great. So Pepper and Mateo, go ahead.
Well, I think that we should also focus on helping young people like find their passions or like what they actually want to do in the world. Because my experience is I've seen a lot of people who don't really know what they want to do. And I think maybe if they had more exposure to all these different career paths or things that they could be doing, um, maybe they would find their passion easier and make a difference out in the world when they're adults. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm here. I think the connection there that I'm kind of hearing, Pepper, is like you help people kind of foster and develop their passions and their interests and what they're good at and what they care about. And that in and of itself is creating additional resiliency within our systems because we have a strong workforce
Yeah.
that is committed and passionate and caring and knowledgeable and all those sorts of things and perhaps consistent in the roles that they play in those systems. So does that track also with kind of a hope of like if you get them while they're young and you help foster those sorts of things that perhaps will land in places that we feel confident about. Is that an accurate statement, I guess is a question?
Yes. Well, of course it's like okay if young people don't know what they want to do
For
in
sure.
in their lives, but
Yeah.
I mean, if they had more exposure maybe to the different types of jobs they could have, then maybe we
Yeah.
would have a more passionate workforce.
Yeah. If somebody listened to me when I was 16, I'd be like a really, really mid DJ right now with like no income. So I definitely agree that you can't stick with your first idea. I love that. Thanks, Pepper. Mateo, close us out. Ideas, thoughts. What does this actually materialize as for you as we think about resiliency? And what do you hope people keep top of mind?
Yeah, totally. So I really think about it from the standpoint of like community organizing and a lot of, what like our state agencies as well as what is it, nonprofits are doing right now. So I think the three like main areas that I can really think about kind of all boil down to kind of two things, literacy and then also giving youth opportunities for like authentic engagement. And when I say literacy, I mean that across, mental health, like, understanding one's own mental health and how to take care of oneself. That's such a central aspect of resiliency. I also see that around a couple other areas like civic engagement, right? I still think that a lot of our education in our schools doesn't actually give students the knowledge to be able to be civically engaged. And like, how do our organizations step in and provide that, especially in the current political moment that we're in? And then let me see, I think there was one other area around literacy. I think around digital literacy, and I think there's a lot of like kind of overlap with that as well as mental health and a lot of the struggles that I think a lot of our youth are facing around. I guess having this access to digital technology, but maybe not having learned the tools of like how to manage that. So I would say kind of across those different areas, just like paying more attention for not only how are these challenges, but how are these like opportunities for us to really deepen our work across these different areas. And yeah, so that would be my answer to that.
Thank you, Mateo. I really appreciate that kind of bringing it kind of full circle across I think all these conversations that folks are hoping to have today. I got a lot of gratitude for you all. I think this is like, again, this is a very, very, very small tip of the iceberg of like what it would mean to continue this dialogue with you And so I hope that we can keep bringing you back for conversations that can be a little bit more dialed in, a little bit deeper. But we wanted to give you an opportunity to just talk high level headlines right now around what's top of mind and what do you care about? What do you want us to care about? What do we need to be thinking about? So I think we've captured a lot of that today. I hope some folks can drop in some gratitude in the chat to these five folks. So appreciate you all being here. I know some of y'all have to run. Some of it's your first week of school. Some of you are in the middle of your day jobs. I think some person's a waiter. I think Chanel, I saw online, maybe you're like a realtor. I'll hit you up for that. It was okay. It was a one-time thing. All kinds of things going on. So thank you all so much for your time today. And again, we'll continue the conversation in a variety of ways. And thank you for everybody for listening in. And we will pivot now to continue the conversation. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
All right. Kirsten, if you can bring up the next slide for breakouts. Loving the chat here. Thank you all for listening. I think when we started this process with the Colorado Resiliency Office, just want to give them a shout out that it was one of the first things they said, which was, how do we get youth voice in this like really complex, nuanced, high level headline discussion that then needs to dive into some really concrete actionable, resilient driven conversations. Like that's a lot to connect. And so just really appreciate CRO's and the state in general's interest to bringing in youth throughout the conversation. And again, that was a small, teeny, tiny, tiny, tiny tip of the iceberg. And would love y'all's feedback on to how we can continue to listen to youth and infuse that youth voice as we continue this process. With that, I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to get us into breakout rooms so y'all can start talking. So for those of you that were here before, very similar setup. Those of you that are new, let me go over some quick highlights. You're going to see five options in just a bit, the different breakout rooms. We want you to self-select into what you're most interested in as far as topics, impact areas go. You'll see two less, and I think Shale got at that, which was the human capacity and the funding piece. That's not because we're dropping those conversations out. It's because we realized in the first summit that those conversations are actually infused into everything we talk about. And so look for those sorts of parts of the conversation as you go into breakouts. Once you're in the room, you're going to be given, again, similar to the folks that are returning, you're going to be given a Google form link in the chat. We're going to have 7 minutes quietly to just generate as many ideas and thoughts that you have in response to the questions you see in the form. Then the facilitators are going to come back and you guys are going to have a more in-depth discussion with some different prompts and different questions. Would really encourage folks to hang on throughout these breakout rooms because we're hoping to get into some really meaty strategy conversations and we're wanting to walk away today with some concrete strategy ideas from you all. So this is not the time to dip out, contrary to popular belief. This is the time to lean in and dig in, give us your thoughts and your ideas. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan, I think, to open up the breakout rooms. And you will have until just a little under an hour. We'll bring you back. And facilitators, we will prompt you when you've got 5 minutes left. But let's get in, let's get people talking, and we'll go from there. So with that, let's do some share outs. Would love to like hear from you all. I'm gonna call in the facilitators really just for sake of time right now, but facilitators, as we mentioned earlier, if you have someone that you want to tap in from your group to share some of what they were talking about, please feel free to do that. But I'm just gonna kind of go room to room and would love to hear from folks. So let's start with housing. Who is our facilitator in housing?
That was me, Trace. I can share out some thoughts. We didn't make it to our last two questions, unfortunately. So we might want to follow up with folks afterwards about some of those areas. But we had a really great discussion. People pointed out a lot of the successes that they've seen and some of the pain points for really encouraging resilient and affordable housing. It was really cool to hear from everybody about really the range of housing needs in Colorado and how conditions can shift for a household or for a community when it comes to housing really fast. And being adaptable is so important, both down to the physical structure of a house to be adaptable to different needs and different changes, and also for communities to be able to supply housing at a range of different income levels, different needs. And also we were starting to get to, responding during disasters too, and having a housing stock, not even just locally, but in a region that can respond to different types of shocks and different types of changing conditions. So I really loved the way that our group was reflecting on all of those things. I won't take up too much time here. And I don't think there's anybody in my group that mentioned wanting to speak in this main group, so I'll hold off on picking on anybody, but just want to thank my group for those thoughts, and I can pass it on to the next person.
Perfect. Thanks. Let's go over to mitigating risks to hazards. Who was the facilitator there, and can you share it for us?
I was facilitator there, and I'm happy to start with some themes that we heard, and then I'll look to Margaret too to feed in any details or anyone from our group. Some of the themes were around really being forward thinking and fluid with changes in administration, funding themes, etc. Some feedback around being proactive instead of reactive as part of resiliency, knowing that risks, hazards, disasters will happen, and focusing more on that. Also, a big focus on the sharing of resources across, especially the state, individualizing those resources to particular situations, rural versus urban, but having a better connectivity around that and allowing for individualization based on what's going on in particular communities. Huge youth voice, really advocating for youth to be more involved in resiliency efforts. Margaret, anyone in my group, feel free to add from there.
I think that's a great summary of our focuses, Helen. The one thing that I will add is we talked about how in the vein of being proactive and prepared, how codes and yeah, mainly codes can play into that proactivity and preparedness of setting a baseline, especially in rebuilding after disaster.
Mm-hmm. And even in some, right, building was discussed a bit, and how to work in that sector in mitigating risks going forward, which is a shift a little bit.
Thanks,
think
Helen.
that's it.
Okay, great. Let's move over to Tamar and your group with Resilient Critical Infrastructure.
Yeah, thanks, Trace. Our group had a really good conversation about kind of the collaboration aspect of infrastructure and whose voices are being heard in terms of prioritizing the kind of infrastructure strategies. People were kind of bringing up the ability to bring in more youth voices. I know that really resonated with a lot of folks. How there's sometimes tension between what some of our older, more established members of the community, their kind of thoughts and priorities in terms of what infrastructure resilience looks like versus some of our younger community members who might just have more thoughts and opinions on kind of the innovative aspects of resilience. Bringing in more private partners to kind of collaborate on infrastructure projects. We also talked about kind of on the more technical side, the importance of kind of microgrid resiliency, the ability of kind of battery storage and those kinds of local community energy solutions, making sure that our energy transmission lines are really strong and resilient was also a key theme in our group. But we really enjoyed kind of diving into some of the inequities that are persistent in our communities, including inner city communities, rural communities who we kind of need to be more intentional about bringing to the table in terms of our conversations on infrastructure. And I'll leave it at that if anybody from my group wants to quickly jump in. But otherwise, I will pass it to the next one.
You got the thumbs up from John Spence. That's all I need. Love it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Was that John Spence?
Oh, I just said we got your thumbs up, and that's all I needed.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I thought Tamar did a great job, and we had a fantastic discussion. And I tried to put some stuff in the comments to be useful.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Appreciate you. All right, with nothing else from that group, Becky, let's come over to your group with, I believe you were strategic growth and land use.
Yeah, thank you so much, Trace. We had a great conversation, and it felt like the conversation kept on going back to resources and funding. So, and really thinking about as we're thinking about strategic growth, there was kind of both sides of the coin. Like, especially in rural areas that are seeing so much pressure, both for kind of more affordable housing, but even other kinds of trends that are happening when you see new cannabis farms that are really drawing on the water supply, as well as desire for local control. And so, we dove a little bit into how can the state really help both with education and understanding, especially, what's that kind of education that you can really talk about the risks and the benefits, I think, for resilience planning in some of these areas that are potentially riskier. So in the wild and urban interface, in floodplains, things like that. We tied and touched on the importance of infrastructure and just thinking about, say, both congestion and being able to get around. So kind of the quality of say road infrastructure or alternative, are there buses or trains or kind of other ways to get around, as well as those evacuation routes? And are these transportation systems, safe as they currently are, much less when you're also trying to evacuate? We talked a bit about just, especially in rural kind of local areas that maybe don't have a lot of staff, as beyond just having money to do the things, do they have enough staff to be able to really do the kinds of planning that's necessary, or to implement the programs that are really necessary? So again, it just kept on kind of coming back to being able to have those type of resources. And especially in recovery, just as we were coming off, I think we're going to get an example of recovery of a small community that was really hit by the 2013 floods, and just the importance of having those resources from the state to be able to rebuild, and I'm assuming hopefully rebuild in a way that made the community more resilient. Lots of good things, and that's just a few of the highlights. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Trace.
Great, thanks, Becky. Oscar, bring us home with the economic resilience, please.
Thanks, Trace. We talked about a lot of things. I'll point out a few, mostly about workforce development being central, need to connect education to emerging career paths, especially in AI, automation, and climate resilience, and make clear that every job can be a climate resilience job. Talk about teachers and education. Teachers and counselors are critical partners, expanding externships, removing barriers to participation, and invest in public education as a foundation in workforce readiness. Supporting rural economies and small businesses, knowing that these rural communities oftentimes have less resources to work with. So investing in local capacity, micro grants, and jobs located where people live. And then kind of like bringing innovators and business leaders to the table, ensuring that business community is part of the resilience planning and messaging, because sometimes these people are on the front lines of kind of like innovation and what's happening in real time, especially with AI. And so having them at the table is pretty crucial in understanding how the future might pan out. And then some kind of like clarifying and connecting programs, reducing confusion over overlapping state and regional initiatives, and where the resiliency office could serve as connective tissue. That is all.
Thanks, Oscar. Anybody want to add anything there that was in that group? Oscar crushed it. Amazing. Okay, cool. We're sitting at the 2:47. I'd love to hear just two people. Like, what's something you're taking away from today? What's something that's top of mind? Whether it's like, man, that was not to put some words in your mouth, but wow, that was amazing to hear from our youth. I'm feeling inspired. I've got some ideas. I'm excited. Just a couple folks. Somebody come off mute. Share with me what you're thinking, what you're taking away from today.
I would just like to say that I think these sessions were great and I love the brainstorming that occurred and a lot of the different ideas that people came together with because I feel like it's important that this is happening.
Thanks, Nicole. Where in the state are you coming from? Just so I know, I'm curious.
I'm in Pueblo.
Cool. Pueblo represent. Thank you, Nicole, for being here. Who else?
Michaela, San Luis Valley. I, I I love this conversation. It just triggered so many ideas for me and just got me a lot more committed to putting more pizzazz in what we're doing. So is that a good word?
It's a great word. And Michaela also is doing some really amazing work in the San Luis Valley around Youth Voice. And so, Michaela, shout out for bringing Ashton to the conversation today. I really appreciate you supporting us in that way. And thanks for joining us again for the convo. So I'm glad you're feeling inspired. That was two people, but anybody else want to share out? We've got a minute.
Yeah. This is Glenn from Lakewood, Colorado, and I just really appreciated all the young people that were sharing their thoughts about the future. They have a challenge. They have a real challenge. Obviously, the climate situation and emerging threats from new technologies coming on board. It's very important for us as senior members of the community, especially me, to try to convey something that is really beyond their imagination right now. And I would love to just sit with these young people and say, there are some things out here that go bump in the night that could take down the whole grid or take down all of society. And I don't want to scare you. I want to motivate you to say that you have the creative ideas to actually challenge and solve these emerging threats. That's all.
Thank you, Glenn from Lakewood. Really appreciate you jumping in and sharing that. I'm loving the intergenerational shout outs. I think that's like super powerful. So really appreciate that we're hearing kind of both ways, all the directions. Great. The one thing I'd just highlight that I heard, Benay, if you're still on the call, I'll give you a shout out because this is a through line that I think we're all kind of talking about. It was a specific call out, I think that Benay shared around what the state's role could be, which is really just, in my world, we call it a community of practice, where you're bringing people together, right, to learn from one another, to share with one another. And I'm hearing that as a specific strategy just around general learning across communities. And I heard that in so many different rooms in so many different ways. So I just wanted to uplift that as like one thing I heard from you all was really like there's opportunities for communities that are alike in risk. There's opportunities for communities that are different in risk. There's opportunities for communities that are alike in like demographics and who lives there and what their jobs are and those sorts of things. And there's opportunities for well-resourced communities with well-resourced communities. And there's opportunities for well-resourced communities and under-resourced communities and those sorts of lessons learned. So I just wanted to draw that out of something that I heard in almost every room in different, again, in different language, different ways, but really appreciate you all thinking about, because that's kind of what we're doing here today, right? Is we're in a community of practice with one another. So really love the convening style learning that you all are putting on display here today. We're shifting a little bit. We're going to do a poll, but I'm going to drop in right now more of an exit ticket because I know I cut you all off. So I do want you to have the opportunity to actually share out anything that's kind of the underscore of missing and also anything that you maybe were sharing that you weren't able to finish sharing. So please take the time to share that today. It's very similar to the first one where it's like, what was meaningful today? What wasn't meaningful today? We have another summit in November to kind of close out the summit process, but we're also continuing conversations with roundtables in September. We're doing lots of continued conversations, so would really, really, really appreciate your feedback, and also want to make sure that we're capturing your ideas appropriately. So with that, Anne, I'm going to hand it over to you to close us out. And Shale, if there's anything else that I'm missing, also please jump in before Anne does. Otherwise, want to respect folks' times and get us on out of here. So go ahead, Anne.
Well, thank you all for staying here till the end and participating. And I am energized just to have the creativity of all of the folks gathered, and we're gonna need that togetherness. So that's been a theme I have taken out of all of the conversations, is working together, and the youth really drove home that point too, is collective action and drawing on our talents and really using them. So thanks for helping us really start to get to okay, what are we going to do here? Let's get to some action that's really going to make a difference. So again, we can't do it alone. So your continued involvement is really critical. So we want to, again, we really value you right now. If you can take the time and fill out that exit or ticket, I guess we're calling it, and give us your feedback, and we can make adjustments to improve the experience for our future engagement opportunities. So stay tuned for more information. We've got roundtables coming up in September where we're going to really try to fill in the gaps and try to craft even more detailed actions for some of these strategies that are starting to come together. And then we're going to come back in November 13th for our third summit, where hopefully we're really getting some clarity on what are we going to do. So that kind of draft strategies and actions where we can get some consensus hopefully generated for what's most important that we put our energy and our resources toward. So we're moving quickly with this update. So we know that behind the scenes, we're really doing a lot of work. We're taking a look at all of the input you're giving us from the last survey at the end of the summit, integrating that data that's informed the primer that you got for this meeting. So know that we are paying really close attention and trying to pull out those themes and synthesize your input. We've been a leader in this work in resilience across all the states. We're first resiliency office, the first Colorado resiliency framework back in 2015. And we really think that this is an opportunity to take us yet to that next level so we can continue to have an impact and make our communities better places to live that can be adaptive and can thrive into the future. So again, we can't do that without your input and engagement and the collective action we've talked about. So again, thank you. And I'm going to call out Pepper Tyson. Thank you for being here. I'm going to end with something I heard you say or thereabouts. We aren't going to be invincible, so let's be resilient. There you go. Thank you, Pepper, and for everyone for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. More information to come. Follow the links in the chat, and y'all have a great rest of your afternoon. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Great program.
Thank you.